Okay, a couple basic setup tips here for the Comanche. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the transmitter here. You want to make sure that your trim tabs are in the center. The exception to this being is your throttle trim tab. This needs to be at the bottom. The other thing, go ahead and make sure your throttle stick is at the very bottom and turn your transmitter on. You always need to turn your transmitter on before you plug the helicopter in, because otherwise if you plug your helicopter in before you turn your transmitter on, the helicopter will take off flying without you. So always remember to turn this on first. But after you've got this on, go ahead and plug your helicopter in. And you'll notice here, see this blinking light? Never move the helicopter till that goes solid green. What's going on is there's a little gyro in here that needs to initialize. When that's initializing, you can't move the helicopter. If you move the helicopter while it's initializing, it's just going to make it not fly properly. Okay, so what we're looking to do is we want to make sure that the servo arm is 90 degrees to the servo. Now, if you've never taken your servo off, you're probably not going to have to mess with this. If you had to replace a servo for some reason, what you're going to do, turn your transmitter on, make sure all your trim's at 0, plug the helicopter in. After the helicopter is done initializing, take your servo arm and place it on the servo until you can get it 90 degrees or as close to 90 degrees as possible. So after you've verified that your servo arms are at 90 degrees to your servo, now you need to go ahead and make sure that your swash plate here, this piece, is level with the frame of the helicopter. And that's level all the way around. So what you're going to do is, using the linkages here, there's another one on the other side, using those two linkages, adjust them by popping the link off here and unscrewing it or screwing it down on the link until you can get the swash plate completely level with the helicopter frame. The next thing is you want to make sure that your fly bar is as close to being level with your blade grips as possible. A lot of times this just includes screwing this link down as far as you can get it, and you can see that you can get it pretty close that way. It doesn't have to be exact, but the closer the better. Okay, so the last step is just to check the blade tracking. Blade tracking is when the blades are spinning around, they need to spin at the same height. Sometimes a blade will spin low and sometimes it'll spin high. That's the blade tracking. So we want to get the blades to track at the same height. So what you're going to do is when you spin up your helicopter, notice which blade is spinning low, then holding the bottom of it, the root down here, what you're going to do is gently twist it. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to twist it to increase the pitch. Now you're only doing this to the blade that rides low. Twist it to increase the pitch, and that'll make it ride up just a little bit higher. It's not an exact science, but get it as close as you can, and as long as you got them tracking nice, you're good to go and you're ready to go fly. Okay, a few common repair procedures here. Your fly bar, that's definitely going to be the first thing you're going to bend. So to take it off, just take off this bottom link here, and a pair of needle nose usually works for that. And then what you got to do is just pull this out of this top holder. And again, I use a pair of needle nose for this. You pop it up, and you can see, if you've crashed a couple times, this will actually start to stretch out a little bit, so this will come out really easy. If you ever get to that point, then it's time to replace this shaft, because this should fit in there pretty snugly. After that, if you have to change your shaft, the first thing you're going to have to do is go ahead, remove the screws, and take off your battery holder. Then what you're going to want to do is this little collar down here, go ahead and take the screws out of each side. When you take the little collar off, a lot of times this gear is still going to be kind of hard to take off. So the easiest thing I find to do is just take a small little screwdriver or Allen wrench and just poke it up through the hole. And when you do that, the top shaft will come right off. Alright, and then at that point the bottom gear will just fall right off. And another thing here, while I got it off, you can see the servos here. Now, there are no screws that hold your servos on. What it is inside here is a big piece of double-sided tape that's going to stick the servo on there. Now, don't think that your servo will fall off, because it won't. That's a very tough piece of tape. And when you want to get this off, you're going to have to take a screwdriver and pry it off, because you can't just get a grip on it and pull it right off. Okay, continuing on. Here you got this top little piece. This will pull right off the top. That's that. Now this piece, there's 4 screws in it, and when you take all 4 screws out, it will come right off the top here. And in case you're wondering, there are holes in the main shaft here where the screws go, so you don't have to worry about not being able to line that up. Okay, next step is to disconnect your servo arms that go to the swash plate. Once you do that, you can go ahead and just lift your swash plate right up and off. Then you see you got a little collar nut here. go ahead, unscrew this, and it will be screwed in there pretty tight, so be prepared for that. And once you get that unscrewed, you can go ahead and pull that straight off the top. Okay. Now, all that's left is just to push this main shaft straight out the bottom. Now, if your main shaft is bent, it's going to be kind of hard to push it straight out the bottom. So it may be easier for you if you just set it on something like a nice hard surface and just push down, and you'll see it'll pop right up. And you'll probably get a bearing with it. And again, if the main shaft is bent, you may have a little bit of problems getting the bearing off, but it will come off, and there you go. That's how you get the main shaft out. If you are having problems getting this bearing off because of either a bent shaft or for whatever reason, you could either just cut it right off, or what I usually find works, I'll take a pair of needle nose pliers and using the part without any grips, kind of just ever so slightly, hold it like that and just tap it. And that usually will knock the bearing right loose. And then one other thing I want to point out here, you can see some brass little bushing here. Don't forget to change that out when you are swapping your main shaft. Okay, I've got my swash plate out here, and the reason I've got it out and the reason I've got a little tube of super glue is I'm going to show you a common problem with these things. Every so often, the top of it will come off. And basically, the easiest way to fix this is first clean up any oil residue on both parts, and then take just a very, very small dab of super glue and get it on the inside of the bearing. Very, very carefully, you only get it on the inside of the bearing. Then at that point, you can just go ahead and push that back down, and it'll super glue this to the inside of the bearing, and you won't have to worry about that coming off. But again, as you can imagine, you have to be very careful, because if you put too much on there, you can super glue the bearing, and then you'll have to buy a new swash plate. Okay, if you're changing your main shaft and then you find out that your new shaft only has one set of holes instead of two, that's fine. Because as long as you got the one set, the bottom set, it'll just snug up on there and help prevent it from moving. But like I said, as long as you got the one set, you're good to go. Okay, a couple other quick notes about changing the main shaft and gear here. When you take your old shaft out, there's going to be a bearing in the bottom of this that you got to take out and transfer over to your new shaft. Because if you don't, when you try to put the gear on, it's going to rub right up against the two gears there, and that's not going to work properly. The other thing is, as I mentioned before, there's a little brass washer that you got to make sure you transfer over. It's got two sides. It's got a raised side and a flat side. Make sure you put the flat side down. And one last thing, your blade grips here. The easiest thing is just to put them on like that and then just bring them down together.